Hello and welcome to our visit with Stan Scroggins. He's the missionary to the Philippines, and we're going to have like a little discussion group with him. I'm Andy Slater. I'm the missions coordinator at New Harmony Baptist Church, and we've got three of our members here with us. First is Martha. Martha serves on our missions committee. Martha, tell us something about yourself. Okay, we lost Martha. Emily, why don't you go?
Sure. I'm Emily Atterbury. I go to the college and career class at New Harmony, and I think I've been going there about 10 years now. So that's about it.
Okay, Brady.
My name's Brady Weaver, and I serve as the ministry assistant on staff at New Harmony. I've done that for about almost 2 years now, and I'm also a student at Liberty University online.
Okay, so Martha didn't come back yet. Maybe she lost her signal. Well, Stan, tell us something about yourself. I'm interested, first of all, to know what you were doing before you went into missions, and then you can share us a little bit about what you're doing.
Okay, sure thing. And let me say to all of you, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this video conference tonight. My wife, Donna, is not able to be with us. She's with our grandchildren. We are here in Jacksonville, Texas, where my daughter and son-in-law live, and we'll be here for about a month. And of course, as you know, I serve as your BMA missionary to the Philippines. But before that, I served for 40 years in ministry in churches throughout the BMA. Don and I served in 4 churches, one in Alabama, one in Mississippi, and 2 in Arkansas. And our last field was in Magnolia, Arkansas. It's about 3.5 hours from here at First Baptist Church in Magnolia, Arkansas. I served there for 25 years. And at around the age of 59 and 60, Don and I wanted to kind of finish well. I mean, 60 is young these days, but even at this young age, we kind of wanted to move in a direction that would finish strong, finish well. We had always had a call for missions, and we had always had a call for the Philippines. And so in 2016, we decided to jump in and get completely wet with missions. I'd been serving in mission capacity, going to missions all over the world, went to the Philippines many, many times. But we decided we would sell our house and our cars and everything we have and give our life over to serving in the Philippines. And what we do there, many of you may have seen our introduction video, which discusses 3 areas of ministry. It discusses equipping, serving, and planting. And in those 3 areas of ministry, the first is equipping, which is our main area of ministry, where we teach at the Bible College in Talisay, Negros Occidental. The Bible College there in the Philippines was started 40 years ago by our pioneer missionaries, Doyle and Linda Moore. And today, that school supplies the pastors and missionaries for some 200 churches and missions in the Philippines. So it's a very vital ministry to the cause of the gospel in the Philippines. What's very important about what's happening these days with the work with the Bible College is we are now training missionaries and church planners to take the gospel to Asia. The work in the Philippines is a mature work. And now it is time for this mature work that God has matured to become missionaries to Asia and take the gospel to Asia. Filipinos speak other languages quickly. They learned other language very quickly. Most Filipinos already speak 2 or 3 languages. They assimilate easily into other cultures, and they can have a profession or a skill that they can take with them to an Asian country. It's much, much more easier for the Filipino to go than it is for Americans today. And they can see me coming, you know, a mile away, but a Filipino looks like all other people of Asia. So that's the equipping area of our ministry. In addition to that, then we have the serving ministry. And that's where we literally try to be servants to the Filipinos. It's so easy when you go to a third world country to kind of fall into the trap of being served by the people of that country. Well, that's not our cause. My wife is an RN. She just finished a master's degree in education. And so we try to be servants to them. We do several BMMI teams come to the Philippines and other Asian countries. We join them. And then right now, even while I'm here in the United States, maybe we'll talk about later, is some of the things that we're trying to do concerning the coronavirus that's happening, of course, in the Philippines as well. Then our third area of ministry is planting. We are also church planners. Missionaries ought to be church planners. And so the way we do that is we partner with graduates from our Bible college. And normally we go to a place where, you know, there's not a witness for Christ. And in the Philippines, most places, some of the more remote islands, are remote places in the mountains of all of the different islands. You know, the Philippines is a country of 7,000 islands. Most of the people have never left their island. Being a third world country, there's no money. And so because of that, they become isolated and their culture and their language becomes unique. And so there's some 700 language groups in the Philippines, and about half of them, or more than half of them, still have not been reached with the gospel. So we partner with our young graduates who are church planners and help them church plant in the mountains. Very unique thing. No one would ever realize this. I didn't until I went to the Philippines. But originally, Filipinos, the original Aboriginal Filipinos, were people kind of like Australian Aborigines. Later on, Polynesians migrated to the Philippines, and their population pretty much took over. But in the mountains of the Philippines, where we live on Negros and in other islands like Mindanao, those original Aborigines have been pushed into the mountains, and the government tries to protect their culture. But you can go there, and if that village will allow you to come in, then you can go in there and have a presence for Christ. And we've been able to do that in two specific villages. One is the Ati tribe, and they are in the mountains of Negros where we live. And we go there and we have a church plant there now. It's just an incredible ministry. I never dreamed that I would be involved in pioneer Aboriginal ministry where there was no gospel at all. Their language hasn't been translated into scriptures yet. We're working on that. And so just incredible opportunities all through our Bible college there. So those three areas that we talked about, the equipping, that's the Bible college, serving the Filipino people, and church planning. And so great opportunity for new missionaries to come there and be a part of this work, and people like myself in our 60s to do something fabulous and phenomenal for the Lord in our later years. Okay?
Very good. Thank you. Martha, you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself. Just tell us something about yourself and ask your questions.
Okay, I'm Martha Aaron, and I am a teacher here in Tyler. And my question is, are you in your office in the Philippines right now?
Okay, great question. But I'm actually in Jacksonville, Texas.
That's where my daughter lives.
Okay, and my son-in-law is the pastor at Fellowship Bible Church here in Jacksonville. And so I'm sitting in the library of their church. And Don and I are on furlough. We planned furlough back in November. We bought tickets to go on furlough back in November. When the coronavirus began to kind of guess in its infancy in January, we had that, believe it or not, it was on China Air to come home. And
Oh no.
so we lost all of those flights, and we had to buy more tickets. And it's a great story, an amusing story of what it took for us to get home. But finally, March 22nd, we did get to the United States. And we're staying here in Jacksonville for about a month with our daughter. We have another daughter that lives in Columbia, Missouri. And then we're going to go there and visit with her and visit churches in Missouri and Kansas and North Arkansas. My mother lives in Huntsville, Alabama, and Donna's sister lives there as well. And so we will go to Alabama for a few weeks and visit churches in North Alabama. Then we will head back to Texas, and then I'll finish up with our home church in Arkansas at First Baptist Church before our plans are to return July 27th.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody else.
Good. Sounds like you're going to be busy.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious about how was that process coming back over here. You said it was an interesting story.
It is okay, and it's part of what the coronavirus started. So imagine a country of 7,000 islands, a third world country, what the COVID-19 could do to that country. When someone gets sick in the Philippines, it's almost always a death sentence. As an example, diabetes and high blood pressure are very prominent in the Philippines. And, you know, they can't afford dialysis. They would never even think about it. And so these are death sentence illnesses for them. And if the coronavirus was to take hold in the islands, it would be devastating to that country. So early on, I think it was really right after Christmas, the president of the Philippines closed the country to any travel from China, from in and out of China. And so that was the first move. The next move, he closed all inter-island travel, meaning you can't even get on a ferry boat and travel an hour to the next island to your island. So that isolated all of the islands, and it protected them from the coronavirus. On the island where I live right now, I just heard today that they've had 4 incidences of coronavirus, and they've all recuperated. But they're still being very strict there. So on March the 15th is when the president closed the inter-island travel. Well, Don and I were planning to depart on March the 19th, which meant when we found out that the islands were going to close, we had to leave 5 days earlier, get to Manila, and then just camp out in our hotel room for 5 days. Then Manila was shut down. And Manila is a city of 22 million people. And of course, we travel there quite often, and it is just a nightmare to travel. And it was a ghost town. You just couldn't believe it. I was in Tyler today, and Tyler is supposed to be kind of locked down or whatever. And I mean, there's just people everywhere, and there were cars everywhere. But in Manila, there was no cars, no taxis. All of the restaurants were closed. There was a little 7-Eleven not far from our hotel, and they sold ramen noodles. And so Don and I went there, and we loaded up, and we had ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for almost 5 days.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, you know, and then it was not knowing. All we heard were rumors. The international airport is closed down. You can't even get a taxi to the airport. You can't get out of the country. And I mean, we just did not know what to do. We could not hear. We couldn't get answers from the airport or from our the airline company that we were using. I finally was able to get in touch with the senator's office from Arkansas, and that's Senator Cotton is our senator from Arkansas, and his associate was able to get me some information. And so the day came that we were going to leave on the 19th, and we got a shuttle from the bus. From our hotel. They had a little guy, and he agreed to drive us to the airport. And we just walked right in and checked in. And then we saw our plane arrive. And we were like, it was, you just almost had tears, because you just don't know what's happening. And our plane arrived, we got on it, we flew to Los Angeles. And we had heard all these rumors that when we get to Los Angeles, they're going to put you in quarantine right away. And y'all, we walked, it probably took us 15 minutes to get out of that airport, and we were on the street. And so all of the rumors and all of the things you heard that was going to go on, almost none of it happened. And so that's kind of our little story, our travel story of getting back to the United States. We spent a couple of days in Los Angeles and visited some of our BMA churches there before we came on to Texas. Oh, by the way, let me tell you this story. Hey, I can have lots of stories, so keep us close on the time, okay? We flew from Dallas to Tyler, and the little plane we were on would come in for the landing, and then just all of a sudden would just shoot back up in the air. He did that twice. The second time the pilot came on, he said that was a cloudy day. This was on like the 23rd of March. He said, hey, we have a law that this aircraft has to be able to see the runway at a certain altitude. And if we can't see it, we have to abort. So we're going to try one more time. And if we can't see the airport and we have to abort, we have to go back to Dallas. So we're all like, got our fingers crossed. He comes down, and sure enough, all of a sudden, he shoots back up. And he says, well, we're going to have to go back to Dallas. We don't have enough fuel to try again. And so we have to go back to Dallas. Then they just put us right on another plane. That plane took off. And again, we're like, and he comes down, and he made a smooth landing. And our family was waiting on us when we got off of the plane. So there you go.
Wow.
We're glad that you made it.
What a journey. Grady, give us a question.
So looking more at the Philippines, I mentioned earlier that I was at Liberty University, and I recently took a class about global communication and engagement and how different cultures interact with one another. And so I was wondering, how do people in the Philippines view America and Americans? And then secondly, what challenges or barriers have you had to overcome to reach them with the gospel?
Yeah. Hey, Filipinos love Americans. If you know much about the history of the Philippines, Ferdinand Magellan discovered the Philippines, maybe back in the 1500s. And so the Philippines was owned by Spain for 500 years. And during the Spanish-American War, which we won, the Americans won, the Philippines became a protectorate, a colony to America, and was that way up until World War II. And after World War II, America gave the Philippines its independence. And that's where they get the name Philippines. King Philip of Spain, was the king when Ferdinand Magellan discovered the Philippines. But the Philippines has a huge Spanish, in the more larger islands, a huge Spanish influence. But because the islands were so isolated, their cultures, basically things like their food and their language, things like that, are the big differences. The commonalities, as you can imagine, since you have taken classes on missiology, are that early on in their history, they were very animistic, and they still are today. Even though the Philippines is 90% Catholic, the Catholics have incorporated animism into the Catholic religion there. And as an example, Filipinos, they don't say they do, but in practice with their animism, they worship their ancestors. So there's a huge festival in the Philippines every year where they take food to the graves of their ancestors. all reminiscent of their ancient history of animism, where they practice, that animistic, spiritual type of religion. As far as being open to the gospel, Filipinos are extremely courteous, and it is just a face-saving thing to be courteous and to listen and to pay. Now, they may reject everything you have to say, but they will listen and be very courteous and open to giving you the opportunity to say or speak just about anything you want. Part of that is because they love Americans. Part of that also is Filipinos. The Philippines is a matriarchal society. And what that means is women have the dominance. Women have the authority. And so it's almost easier for my wife to share the gospel, because they will submit immediately to an older woman before they would to a male. I'm older. I know I don't look it, but they look at me and they do acquiesce because of my age. The Philippines has a great honoring system to the elderly. They have a little practice that they do. It's kind of beginning to fall out with the younger generation, but you go up, Filipinos teach their children this from the minute they're born. They will say, bless, and they'll take that child's hand and they'll cup it and bring it up to the head of an elder. And so now many adults still do this. When you come into a room and you don't know them, you introduce yourself. I'm Stan Scroggins. I'll shake their hand, and they'll immediately take their hand and put it on my forehead. And it means you're blessing them. And so they honor the elderly, and they make provisions in the way they live to the elderly. And being matriarchal, they put women in authority. When you go to a restaurant, they always bring the bill to the oldest woman at the table. So I always make sure the bill goes to my wife. They just immediately, they don't even question. They would never take it to a male, because the woman is the one that's going to have the money. And so that's a little bit about their missiology view. The difficulty for us is because of our wealth. Filipinos hate to tell anyone no. It's they lose face. And even though they can't do what you ask, they will say yes. They will lie to you because it would hurt their face. They would lose face if they said no. So they will say, and so their culture is you never can depend on them. If you're waiting on somebody to come to your house and deliver water, you never know if they're going to show up, because maybe they don't have any water. Maybe who knows what it would be, but they'll always tell you they'll be there. And then it might be 3 days later before they show up. So these are some of the things. And with our wealth, look, that as a missionary, I'm not wealthy, but the Filipinos, they think Americans are just rich, and we are rich compared to their livelihood and the way they live. And so that's the biggest challenge for us, is not letting our money take precedence over the Filipino church doing things themselves. I have found in the short time that we've been there that if we will just say, hey, I can't help with that right now, they will find a way to make it happen, and then it's theirs, and then they earned it, and then their church can sustain it. What has happened in the Philippines over these years, not just with BMA churches, but with lots of other mission organizations, is, of course, they would go in with a lot of money, build buildings, and then the Filipinos, there's no way they can keep it up. And so they just rot. This is a tropical island right on the equator, and termites and heat and moisture, and buildings just deteriorate. It's amazing how quickly. And so Americans and other missionary organizations and countries came into the Philippines, throwing money, building buildings that the Filipinos just could never keep up. And so we try to practice a no footprint missiology, where what that means is when we depart, the work can stay, but the American footprint leaves, and it's completely and total Filipino church.
Very good. We've got time for one more question, so who's ready?
Well, I would simply ask, how can we pray for you? What are some prayer requests that you have?
Okay, well, a couple of things I would tell you about. There is a little baby named Ezra, and I met her. I'm not going to tell her long story, but I had gone to a little island called Gimerus where we have a new mission there, and Ezra is severely cleft palate, and I wanted to try to help Ezra, and so I put the word out, and some people sent me funds to help her have her cleft palate surgery. And so when she went to get the surgery, she was dehydrated, so they wouldn't do the surgery because she had been dehydrated. And then now her second time has been delayed because of the coronavirus, and she cannot travel. Her island is a little small island with a population of about 500 people, and she has to travel to Iloilo, next door to her island where the hospital is, and so she is having to wait. So that's an individual. One of our service areas that we try to do to help the Filipinos is baby Ezra. Then the other areas is our church planting. We have 4 church plants that Don and I are partnering with. One of them is with Genesis Morano. We were planting a church in our village where we live in Talisay. He's a church planter. Then we have J.R. Suico in the mountains of the island of Leyte. Then we have Kenneth Avencina, who is on that island Gimerus where baby Ezra is. And then we have, his name is slipping me right now, Kevin Bermeo, and he is up in the mountains of Agu. And so these are 4 missions. And look, Filipino churches, our early missionaries trained them so well. They believe if they start running 15 or 20, they should start a mission. And so these missions that I'm talking about, that are missions up in the mountains and areas, they already have a mission, and they're not even a church yet. And one of them up in the mission in Agu, that mission already has 2 missions, and they're not even a church yet. So the gospel just spreads quickly once it takes hold, because they have gotten this in their mind that they must spread the gospel if they are running 10 or 15 or 20 people. So good question. Thank you.
Okay, I've just got one thing in closing, and that is if people want to keep up with you or talk to you, contact you, what is the best way for them to make that connection?
Thank you. Hey, we have a website. It's thescroggins.com, THESCROGGINS.com. And you can go there, and at the very bottom, just flip through it. And at the very bottom, there's a sign up where you put your email and your name, and you'll automatically be signed up to our newsletter. We send a newsletter out every month. We promised when we went that we would do everything in our power to stay in contact with the churches. And so we've been able to do that through that newsletter. And periodically through Mission World Magazine, there's things there about us, but specifically that. And if you contact me through that, you can find other ways to contact me, but thescroggins.com is the main place.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much. Our time's up, so I'm going to switch off the recording.